So I'm just sitting out here right now, and I just came across this story about a kid, 7 year old. I think his name is Carson O'Brien. And unfortunately, this child, this baby, lost his life because of, I think the term they used was cardiomyopathy. Basically, he had a medical episode and a heart attack because he was morbidly obese. The child was 7 years old and he weighed, wait for it, 255 pounds. Now, at the time of his death, he was 50 inches. So, to give you an idea of 50 inches, that would be 4'2". That would be probably from this fence post up here, which is probably about 5'9". It probably would be about right here. So the kid was not a tall 255 pound or a tall 7 year old. He actually probably was a little bit undersized for seven, maybe. But nonetheless, police were called, or the rescue squad was called. And when the reports state that the rescue squad arrived at the home, they noticed immediately that it was a situation of hoarding. So not only was this child 255 pounds, this child was also living in a squalor condition known as hoarding. Now, I've known hoarders and I've seen what hoarding looks like, not firsthand, but maybe secondhand. Hoarding is a situation where people are reluctant or are afraid to release items or let go of items. So, over the course of time, their homes accumulate with more and more items. And what I've seen with these hoarding situations is sometimes people confuse hoarding with just nastiness and behavior because some folks do not throw away trash. If you look at the episode of Hoarders, or if you look at the show Hoarders that comes on A&E or used to come on A&E, what you would see is you would see people living in squalor conditions where it was just the homes were just filled with garbage. And I'm not talking about like items that could be or could not be considered value. I'm talking about like empty McDonald's cups. I'm talking about like Subway wrappers and shit like that. So this might be a situation where this young child was living in. From the looks of his family, I wouldn't think it's holding on to value. I would probably say it probably was the fact that they didn't have or they didn't keep items. Or they didn't discard their trash items. What's even more crazy about the story is the father, they said, actually had a decent job. He actually had medical insurance. But they said that this boy had only been to a doctor once his entire life. They had another child that people said that they didn't even know existed, or that was on any record or any files. See, this is going to turn into a different conversation real quick about homeschooling. Now, I'm an advocate of homeschooling. I actually am a product of homeschooling for a certain number of years. But at the same time of my advocacy for homeschooling, I have noticed a trend that has been occurring with people who will use homeschooling as a means to isolate their kids and keep their kids from doing absolutely anything and being isolated from society. That's not the goal or the method of homeschooling. Homeschooling is supposed to be an opportunity for a child to get a much more structured, better personal learning opportunity away from the failures in the education system. Unfortunately, that's not what some of the O'Briens did with keeping their kids at home. They kept this child home and they let him eat and eat and eat, and he kept gaining and gaining and gaining. But the question I have for this very short live that I'm going to keep up is that I want to ask people who are watching, and thank you guys for coming in who are watching. I want to ask this question to you guys about this case. Is this a case of child neglect? Emotionally, you're going to say, yes, it is. Emotionally, you're going to say, what kind of parents did to do this to their kid? But I want y'all to think about something real quick. How many people you know, even in your family, who are failing their kids with poor diets and poor health? Would you say that they're neglecting their children? I can remember volunteering at a local food shelter. And this is a tragic story in itself because, ironically, the mother of the child I'm going to speak about is in prison right now for the murder of that child because she allowed her girlfriend to beat the child to death. Put your kids in healthy environments. But this mother will come to the food shelter, and I remember her feeding this child who was 3 weeks old gravy from the food shelter. And when the lady stepped in to try to educate this girl about not feeding the baby gravy, she fussed, she protested, she angrily stormed up and walked out with her child. Somebody should have locked that bitch up. At least that baby would still be here. Or locked her up then because she locked. So this child, the 7-year-old who I'm speaking about right now, who is deceased because of child neglect, how many of you know somebody that feeds their children unhealthy food all the time? You guys know somebody that that always takes their kids to McDonald's? You know somebody that doesn't know how to cook a meal, but they know how to go to the dollar menu? You know somebody that doesn't know nutritional value in meals. All they know is they want to feed their kid and give them something now. So how are these parents any different? That sprinkler about to get me. How are these parents any different than the ones that you see daily malnourishing their children? And malnourished does not mean you don't feed your kid. It means that your kid does not have a healthy or proper diet. So as I ask this question to you guys, and if you want to comment, you can. Is this really child neglect? Is this really child abuse? And if it is, what are we doing for those who have done the same thing with their own kids, but it just did not lead to the death of their children? Because a lot of people feed their kids this processed, modified, GMO crap. So that's all I got for it. And I want to thank you for everybody that came in and check it out. If you want to support the channel, the Fake Teacher Fund, as I said, we're building and growing. You can hit the Cash App. Is money sign MHBT83. But we'll talk next time, and we'll see you there. KTC, salute to you, sister. I'm check the replay on this, and then I also did a short because of a tragic situation about a little boy that lost his life because his parents basically fed him to death. Yeah. No, no, I'm not out for a walk. I'm just I'm just parked and just enjoying life. Damn that truck, I love that truck. But I do wanna try I am gonna trade it in probably, in the next year. But yeah, it's a tragic story. But the question I have to ask about it is, and I guess, like I said, since I see you commenting in here, I guess the question I wanna ask people is this child neglect? And the reason I asked if it's child neglect, yeah, he was 255. And the reason I asked if this was child neglect is because, are we only saying it's child neglect because the boy died? Okay, so you'll say it's child neglect? So, question, do you know anybody who misfeeds their kids grossly? Do you know anybody who has obese children? And salute to you for popping in and sharing love. And you always show support. We started off on the wrong foot for the wrong reason and the wrong people. But man, I really value you as a content creator. But I'm sure, so you don't know anybody personally, but I'm sure you have seen kids who are obese. But would you say those parents are neglectful of their children? I don't know, because sure, you, so thank you, salute to that. But would you say people are neglectful of their children all the time? Because how do you know if it's just a child doesn't have a, it's genetic that a child is bigger than usual? I have family members who genetically they're bigger than usual. Think about the parents who take their kids to McDonald's, or a mama who don't know how to make a meal, but she know how to take her kids to McDonald's. So, are we going to now become the police of society where we are locking parents up for bad diets for their kids? Now, there's more to this story with Carson O'Brien. I think his name's Carson O'Cason, but it's more to this story with this tragic young fellow who lost his life because his parents were hoarders as well. But then do we look at people's homes and we say, "Hey, we're going to lock you up because you have too much clutter." Well, what's determined as too much clutter? What's determined as a bad diet? If a child is obese, are we really locking parents up for that? Because if we are, then we have to start looking at every single parent who misfeeds their kids. So that's what I wanted to leave it with, and it's not a simple question, but it is a question. It sounds simple. That it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, that's child abuse or child neglect." That's an easy question to answer. Yes, it is. But in our real world, with real food stamps, and we saw people lose their fucking mind, excuse my language, when people, when the government restricted sugary items, when they restricted the processed foods, when they restricted all of these artificial foods off of the food stamp meter, we saw people lose their minds. Well, I'm gonna feed my children. Well, don't feed them Cheetos. But can you really say now that those parents are neglectful to their children? I can say yes. We can theoretically say yes, they should eat better. But can we say lawfully those parents should be put in jail? Because that's what we just did with the O'Briens over the death of their son. And make no mistake, I do believe they should go to jail. I think it's great that they can't buy. Hell yeah, it's great. Salute to the government for doing things right. Everybody points out some stuff they do wrong, but that's right. If you are on government assistance, you should not have the Cadillac version of food. I will always say that. If you need government assistance, it should never be the um, top of the line quality of items, because the goal is to get you sustainable until it's time to get you off. So I just wanted to share that. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Salute to I saw a few other people pop in and pop out, but answer that question for me. Should parents be held liable if their children are obese? And if you want to support the Fake Teacher Fund, Cash App is # MHBT83. And with that, I'm gone. Salute.